The International Energy Agency recently released a report on global hydropower, and it's very interesting. They call it the forgotten giant of clean energy and suggested that in order to be on the net zero to 2050 trajectory, that hydropower development has to double what it's currently planned between now and 2030. And so I'm going to talk to Heymi Behar, who is an analyst for the IEA. Welcome to the interview, Heymi.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, Heymi, why don't we start off with an overview of the study, please?
Yes, thank you very much for your interest. So this was the forgotten giant, as you described, because it is the largest clean energy source that we have globally, much larger than all renewables combined. But not only that we don't talk about another aspect of hydropower, which is it is also one of the largest flexibility source that we need, which means that a technology that can increase or decrease its power in a flexible way to integrate wind and solar, which is, as you know, variable sources. We knew this before the study, but that's why we wanted to dedicate a whole report on hydropower because we think it's extremely important for the clean energy transitions. And what we saw in the coming 10 years, that hydropower growth will slow down actually significantly compared to the past 10 years. And the reason behind this is obviously first, there are a few challenges in the emerging countries, which accounts for the 90% of the hydropower growth in the coming years, especially in China, where the hydropower costs are increasing because of the sites are becoming more difficult to reach, and because of the many large projects that have been deployed and increasing social acceptance challenges. In other parts, hydropower projects are large, takes a lot of time, financing is very difficult, and they are risky because of the long permitting times. That's why we see an important decline in hydropower growth. China remains the largest country still, 40% of all additions, followed by India, Turkey, and a few other countries in the Southeast Asia region. For the first time, we also looked at specifically what types of hydropower projects will be deployed. We saw that reservoir hydropower, large plants, are also useful for water management, flood control, and irrigation will lead the growth of hydropower with about 40%, and the majority of the rest will come from pump storage projects.
Now, Heymi, there's I want to zero in on one thing you said, and that's the flexibility, because Canada has a lot of hydropower, the United States has a lot of hydropower, and there's a lot more attention being paid to the value of hydro. So it could be a battery for renewables, and so let's say that hydro, to build new hydro, is $80 a megawatt hour, compared to wind and solar at $20 or $30 a megawatt hour. So the renewables might be cheaper, wind and solar might be cheaper, but the value of that battery raises the value of the hydro far beyond what its cost per megawatt hour. Have I got that correct?
You got it exactly correctly. This is the thing that energy markets currently cannot price. And this is a big issue for hydropower because the value of hydropower from balancing renewables from seconds, really, even the below second levels for electricity security, to a seasonal storage, which they provide both actually in this time frame. There is no other technology that can provide this so long time scale. But current energy markets and the design of energy markets, unfortunately, does not value this properly. And you're exactly right by saying that in the United States, building new hydropower is probably very expensive compared to building wind and solar. But when you take into account its value, plus its value that it's actually a renewable technology, on top of this is actually extremely important, but we need to find a way to value it actually in the electricity markets.
Now we see this debate playing out in the developed economies. How do you value it? how do you integrate it to make the best use of that hydropower? So if it's a problem for developed economies like Canada, the US, some European countries, how much more difficult will it be for countries like India, Turkey, and Ethiopia, which are expected to lead hydropower development in the 2020s?
So the reason why the hydropower is being deployed and also the storage hydropower is being deployed in these places, because there's a long-term vision and a policy behind it. So in Turkey, for instance, Turkey has a long-term target about hydropower, but it also provides incentives, a stable revenue stream that can value hydropower in the longer term. So which means that the developers of hydropower know that they will get a fixed price for a long time, that they can see the revenue stream and the return on investment. So Turkey is the same, and India is also has a similar policy. When you leave it to the volatile electricity markets without any long-term contract structure, which most of the advanced economies don't have currently, it is very difficult for a new hydro project to be realized. There are so many projects in the United States and in Europe, pumped hydro storage projects that are actually can be developed, but cannot come to operation because the developers do not exactly know whether they will have a proper return on their investment and take the risk, which is it takes about 7 to 10 years to build these projects in the developed economies, and they really need a visibility to be able to provide this return on investment.
How much potential is there globally for hydropower development, say between now and 2030 and then after 2030?
So there is actually today about 50% economic potential. If we talk about more theoretical potential, it's even more. But let's say economic potential is about 50%. And 2/3 of this is located in, actually more than 2/3 of it, about 75%, is located in emerging economies, obviously, because they are latecomers to the game. As you know, US, Canada, and Europe developed hydropower in 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s. So they started developing in 1960s, 70s, and beyond. That's why most of the untapped potential is there. And compared to what we will develop, an untapped potential is a portion of it. But the question is not about the potential, in my opinion, is that how we tap that potential sustainably, how we take those sustainable rules and regulations and then develop these projects in a sustainable manner that will bring net environmental benefits to the environment, but also to the societies.
What are the obstacles? I mean, obviously, government policy is one, but what other obstacles stand in the way? So, for instance, are there a lot of concerns about the environmental impact of hydropower?
So the biggest two concerns, I will say, one is the permitting. So the permitting for hydropower is extremely complex in many countries. There are multiple governmental and non-governmental organizations or institutions are involved in assessing the environmental impact and the economic impact of hydropower to the society and to the nature. And this takes, in some places, 5 to 10 years. And it is a very uncertain period of time where the developer spends a lot of money to do all these additional investment, but doesn't know exactly what to do during that process. It's usually plant by plant basis. It's very complicated. That's why it discourages the investors to enter even into that process. That's the biggest challenge. The second one is sustainability, and develop these projects sustainably costs additional money, which it should. We should develop all hydropower sustainably. That's why in places where governments provide a bit of a help in this is very helpful. And the permitting and sustainability challenges are the two main ones. And along with that, we also have social acceptance challenges, which means that many governments and governmental organizations need to be involved in the pre-development process very early on to explain the benefits of hydropower to the society that is living around or very close by. And there has been a lot of mistakes about this in the past, but there are good examples in the world that can be followed. By the way, Canada is one of those that engaging the communities very, very early on in the process and making them part of the project rather than against the project is extremely important. The other important issue that I mentioned is lack of policies. There are today about 30 countries who have hydropower policies or targets, while for wind and solar, as you know, there are hundreds of countries, more than 100 countries who have policies. And the third one, and the last major one, will be the contract structure. So you need a long-term visibility in the contract structure in order for hydropower projects to be realized.
Maybe last question, how important is accelerating hydropower development to the IEA's net zero by 2050 scenario?
It is extremely important because why it's important? We need all technologies that can provide flexibility and renewable energy. We talk about batteries, but batteries are not renewable energy. They are renewable as much as they are charged with renewable energy. And they can only address, at least in the cost structure today, shorter term storage capabilities. But we will need more of those shorter term capabilities, but also a longer term storage capabilities to integrate wind and solar. And the only option we have today is hydropower. And that's why we need battery storage, pump storage, and other reservoir hydropower facilities that can operate flexibly together and complement each other. In the future, we will have less and less fossil fuel-based dispatchable electricity sources, such as coal, such as gas, because of the net zero challenge. And what are the technologies to replace those? To be in the same form of flexibility, if we want to go towards a renewable technologies, hydro, geothermal, and bioenergy are the only ones. And at a cost competitive one, hydropower is the standing one. That's why it's important to develop hydropower and many other technologies at the same time.
Heymi, thank you very much for this. Really appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much.